Fox News Podcasts presents the Bret Baier Podcast with Fox News Chief Political Anchor Bret Baier.
Jessie, Sarah, Richard, great to see you. We talked before the debate, almost a year ago. A lot has happened since then.
Yeah.
A lot. Richard, you're retired.
Yep.
Congratulations,
Thank you. I
man.
appreciate that.
Have things changed for you? How do you look at things now?
Well, one, I just think in the last 2 weeks of now going on Medicare and Medicaid, and doing that whole process was interesting, but easy. I thought it was going to be terrible to try, but even Social Security, you could actually talk to a person, and I thought that was amazing in this day and age that somebody actually calls you and answers your questions. But
you start thinking about different things.
Yeah, you start thinking about a friend of mine on Saturdays, 57, our dean of admissions, was on his boat and he had a heart attack and died just last Saturday. And I was like, we always talked, we never wanted to die at work. And so I'm glad I had the opportunity to retire.
Yeah.
But I'm just sitting there going, that is just sad, that we work our whole lives and then something changes.
Right.
So I'm excited about where the future goes, but now it gives me more time to follow history, politics, and all those kind of things.
Does it change what you're concerned about when it comes to this election?
It did. Right away, when I started looking at the Social Security and the Medicare and how much drug prices were, I never realized my insurance, but one drug that they said you have to pay for was $2,400 for 90 days. And I went, how do people afford $2,400 for 90 days? But I did the drug company thing where they'll offset the cost and pay for it. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky that way. But how many seniors don't get that? Yeah. And I'm a smart guy, I think, in a sense, but I'm like, what about the people who don't know who to call or to go through that whole process?
Yeah, and that's not an issue that's coming up a lot, like when people are talking. Sarah, we talked, you were concerned about national security and the economy. You're in the banking business. Have things changed? The world has obviously changed since we last talked.
The world has changed quite a bit since we last talked, but those issues remain really paramount. And I think, just like I said last year, they're incredibly intertwined. And so looking at the two together is really important to me because of the way that our economy, and as just a global leader, the way that the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency stands, and any impacts and threats to that does also impact our national security as well.
Business owner, we talked in your plumbing business in the showroom. You're worried about getting workers. That obviously hasn't changed.
Yeah, same skilled trade shortage. We also have concerns with, since we saw you, we've had crime impact our team. When crime impacts the team, safety becomes a major consideration. We've had...
How big a deal is that here?
So we've had 4 break-ins this year alone.
4?
Yes, 4.
At your store?
Inside of trucks throughout the Milwaukee area. And this is not a Milwaukee issue. This is something that's much more global.
Right.
But there is as a small business owner and being responsible for this team of people and making sure they go home safely, we've been fortunate that nobody's gotten hurt. It's been during the daytime that somebody has broken into a van to steal the tools, to take some of the equipment off of there. But what happens when one of my plumbers comes out and confronts that person? And so that's something that we're investing a lot of money. You have the cost to replace all of the tools that are taken. We don't report them to insurance because 4 separate incidents with deductibles and then the insurance costs. We have companies and other businesses that we have partnerships with that are facing non-renewal. The insurance world is a huge dynamic to that. So we've had some significant costs as a small business that we didn't anticipate having this year. And you figure it out and you make it work. But we need to start seeing consequences for actions that people are taking to deter it.
And inflation was a big deal when we talked. It's obviously still a big deal, right?
Costs continue to rise. We're seeing it impacting our clients and their families. We've had clients that have been laid off. We've been fighting to not increase our prices and trying to be more efficient so that we're not passing that down to our clients. But at some point, where do you stop? There's only so many places you can cut costs.
Yeah. So we talked before the primary debate here. Obviously, the big debate that happened a few weeks ago between Donald Trump and Joe Biden did have an effect on some people's thoughts. Yeah. Did it affect you all?
For me, it Donald Trump, I like the fact that he's more reserved, but he came across more presidential. And Joe Biden, I feel bad for him. I mean, I'm confident he's a great guy. He just didn't seem there, and that scares me, for the future. And then that came out again even during his press conferences since then.
And you guys, how do you feel?
Same. I mean, I don't know that it changed anything as much as it revealed what I think was being, covered, frankly, and, wisely so, because it's the leader of the free world. Like, that does not instill confidence. And so to see it that much and that plainly, especially knowing how much he prepared, the time he took off to rest, all of that, if that's the performance when he's rested and prepared, that's concerning. And but frankly, just like was the interview with Lester Holt, right? And Lester having to remind him that his head of the Secret Service is a woman, not a man, and things like that. Like those are really concerning things. So,
yeah, and I should point out, all three of you said you had open minds about voting. You could go either way depending on what you felt was the right person. I mean, you still feel that way?
Yes, absolutely. But I think the biggest concern is what is the message we're sending to other countries? I mean, after the debate, it was a concern. I have 2 little boys, and that becomes front of thought of mind, because you want to make sure they're in an environment that's going to be safe. And we looked a little weak after that debate.
We'll be back in just a moment. What about what happened Saturday? The assassination attempt? How did you see it? What did you think about it? What do you think it means, big picture?
I actually had tears in my eyes watching it a little bit. And when I looked and when Trump stood up and, raised his fist, I mean, I'll tell you, that was like a hero moment. You just looked at it and you just said, that's truly an American who stands up and says, don't mess with us. We'll always fight back. I'm not giving up. You cannot shut us up. You know what I mean? And I looked at that and I just went, wow. That guy did come across as president. I mean, the guy almost lost his life, and yet he stood up. And then when he said, where are my shoes? I looked and I go, oh my God, that didn't even bother him. He was like, I paid $800 for those shoes. Well, that made me laugh a little bit.
Yeah. When he walked in the hall, it was really a moment. Yeah. And he had that bandage on his ear. And, I think it does affect people. Mm-hmm. You think so?
I absolutely
was so calm during that, when people were talking about him. He sincerely looked like he cared, and he was touched by all their words.
One thing that I've liked to see is afterwards, we're such a polarized society when it comes to politics, and we were at a party last week in our neighborhood, and nobody talks about certain things. You just avoid it. But it seems
because it gets awkward.
It does. It's awkward, and the neighbors stop talking. I have family members that don't talk to each other. Like, things get a little bit awkward and weird. But it seems since that attempt on Saturday, like it's pulled people together and things have really kind of simmered down a little bit, where now people can start to talk about the issues and have serious conversations where listening is actually occurring. Because up until that point, people just want to make their point. They don't care whether anybody listens or not, and there can't be that dialogue for it to be a collaboration to exchange ideas.
That's a great point. Listening first is a big deal. Yeah. What do you think?
I'd echo everything everyone said. I also think it puts a little bit more renewed focus on vice presidents, right? I mean, because in either case, regardless of, the worst possible outcome happening in an assassination attempt, you have an age component to both candidates, right? To both major candidates. And so I think that does renew the focus then on the vice president as well.
We're trying to do that vice presidential debate. We'll see if that works.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
What do you guys think of Vance, that choice? Any thoughts?
Well, I looked at his age, but Richard Nixon was 39 when he became vice president. So I'm like, man, he turned out, I like Nixon, but he turned out pretty good, so.
By the way, I should point out, you like Nixon, you like Hillary Clinton. You've liked all kinds of different folks.
Like I said, if you need me to call the election, I can call it, and then you choose the other person. Because I lost 19 elections, but I like the person.
Yeah, what about Vance?
Vance, really impressive background, especially, the come from nothing story in the way that he understands kind of, what gets derogatorily referred to as flyover country. I think that's going to play really well.
Elegy, the book.
Right, and I mean, inspired by Amy Chua, right, but who wrote Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mom, which is one of my favorite books. Also then, an attorney understands finance, sitting on the, I think it's the not the Joint Finance Committee, the Banking and Subcommittee and Financial Protection Bureau and things like that. So I think he has a real understanding both of economics and obviously a Marine, so foreign policy, right, understanding what it takes to, for those of us who have sons, what that looks like and things like that. So it's a pretty dynamic choice. I mean, there's not a whole lot there not to like from a background standpoint.
I agree. Very solid choice. Appreciate his service to the country. And he comes across as older than 39, and I don't mean that offensively, but he carries himself very well. Like, he's been around a lot longer than that. You look at people, 39 wasn't that long ago for me, just a little bit. And I look at people my age and younger, and the things that he has accomplished are impressive. He's an intelligent man.
So what do you all want to see between now and November? Like, how do you want to see this develop, this race, and what are you looking for from these two men? We'll hear a big speech on Thursday night from former President Trump, and then we'll hear in Chicago likely President Biden, but I mean, the Democrats are trying to figure all of that out still, I think.
I continue to want to see more advocacy for skilled trades, and that's something because it's a mission for me, but also crime being something that needs to be focused on. What are we going to do to get crime under control and so people aren't being put in danger, and that we're teaching the younger generation the way to be brought up rather than just having this continued cycle of kids that are committing crimes and they have no future. Let's find a way so that they have bright futures.
How about you, Sarah?
I think that what you were just saying kind of ties in, because we have now a sitting president who's been in politics his entire career, and then a former president, so you know kind of what you're getting from both, right?
From either administration.
It's unique in some ways because most of the time someone who's never been president is running for president,
right,
and they're telling you everything they're going to change, and then they get there and they realize you can't actually change much, or whatever the case may be. So you kind of know what you're getting with either. And so tapping into what you said about it's nice that some of the rhetoric has calmed down, civility, and actually then voting on issues and who we think can make a better run of it for America is hopefully what will happen over the next few months. I don't have too high of hopes for that because I think, unfortunately after a few days...
I was going to break it to you. I think we're in for a bumpy ride.
I get accused of rosy-colored glasses and Pollyanna all the time. But like I said, we already know what we're getting with either candidate. And so, just... hopefully we get there safely.
Richard, the legal troubles for the former president, some of them are going by the wayside.
Yep.
Some of them have been erased. Some of these rulings are taking that off the table. Obviously, he's still convicted of those felonies in Manhattan, but it doesn't seem like it's affecting the polls that much. Yeah. Is it affecting you?
No, not at all. I think of that, I go back to Nixon, I think of that quote when he said, when the president does it, it's not illegal, And it's one of those things that I just look at Trump lately, and with his cases, he's just confident. Like, he just stands up and just says, take your best shot.
And that's an evolution for you when we talked a year ago. I mean, that's a big evolution.
Right, because
if I remember our discussion.
Right, it was arrogance in before, but now I'm reading it more as a confidence, and he's trying to be that guy who stands out and says, this is who I am. And I sat back and I said, man, if we could take half that money that we spend overseas in all these other countries and put it toward our inner cities, our education, our schools, America's streets really would be paved with gold. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And I'm back to that point of saying, let's look out for ourselves.
So do you think you know how you're going to vote in November? Are you getting there?
I knocked one off for mine.
Yeah.
And right now it's still between Kennedy and Trump. But I just read that Vanity Fair article about Robert Kennedy, and I didn't like it. And so now I'm going to be watching the news more to see what happens with his behavior and his issues in the next 2 months. And so that's going to stand out to me more.
I mean, it's a fascinating time, and it's a dangerous time, for our country, and it's precarious.
We have a spotlight on it, which is, ignoring it and putting your head in the sand isn't going to do it any good. So now that people are tuned in and they're listening and people are aware, and if those issue discussions can start to happen, real change can come out of this.
Yeah.
That's good. All right, guys. Anything else? I think we covered the waterfront.
We did.
Apropos.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Really appreciate it.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.